Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, EU Battery Regulation, Key Compliance and Sustainability Requirements for 2025 and beyond. So, my name is Orla Morris, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Compliance and Risks, and I'm delighted to be joined by the wonderful O'Neill. Dita Sen is a Senior Regulatory Compliance Specialist here with Compliance and Risks and a Turkish qualified lawyer and sworn translator for 15 years with extensive experience in AI policy. She is a Senior Regulatory Compliance Specialist working with Compliance and Risks for the last 5 years. And prior to joining the company, she worked for global companies, including the Lehman Brothers Holdings Incorporated, ADP, and several different law firms in Turkey as legal counsel for several years. Dita holds a triple LLM in European Master in Law and Economics from the Universities of Bologna, Ghent, and Haifa, and an LLB from Yeditepe University, where she was awarded a full merit-based scholarship by the Turkish government. She also holds a BA in Communication and is the SME for Batteries and AI. Dila further developed her expertise in AI through an advanced certification from the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Policy, CAIDP, in Washington, D.C., subsequently becoming a team leader. Currently, Dila is an AI Policy Group member at CAIDPS's AI Policy Clinic and an active member of the Istanbul Bar Association's AI Working Group. Thank you for joining us today, Dila.
Thank you so much for having me today.
We're also joined by Andrew O'Neill, who's a regulatory compliance specialist with Compliance and Risks and has extensive experience in low voltage, toys, metrology, and radio engineering. Andrew has hands-on experience in enforcement, inspections, warrant executions, and market surveillance activities. Throughout his career, Andrew has contributed to several EU-level projects with a focus on risk assessment methodologies, market surveillance practices, electronic surveillance or e-surveillance, customs control of unsafe products, and counterfeit and non-genuine goods. At Compliance and Risks, Andrew serves as the primary subject matter expert on batteries and toys and is a secondary expert in electromagnetic compatibility, EMC, and radio. Andrew's insights into battery compliance have been featured in various published blogs, showcasing his in-depth knowledge and practical guidance on regulatory developments. Thanks for joining us today, Andrew.
Thanks very much, Laura. Very warm welcome.
And to all of you, if you have any questions at all during this webinar, please make sure to use the Ask a Question button on the left side of your screens, or if you would like to start a conversation and go directly to one of our members of the team, please use the Start a Conversation button. And before we officially kick off the webinar, I just want to provide a little bit of background about Compliance and Risks for those who are joining this series for the first time. At Compliance and Risks, our mission is to help ensure global companies have the tools and information to build safe, sustainable products in a world full of change. We're the trusted product compliance technology provider for some of the world's leading brands and have spent over 2 decades honing the digital tools and expertise and content you need to stay ahead of the regulatory landscape and prove your product's compliance, protecting your brands and helping to drive your growth. At Compliance and Risks, we have the world's most comprehensive regulatory database with over 100,000 regulations historically available in C2P, with a global regulatory coverage and expertise across over 10 industries. We understand that the compliance world definitely doesn't sleep, and our regulatory expert team is truly global, with 28 languages collectively spoken across the team, all fortified by our 30 knowledge partners. C2P is our enterprise software designed to keep global organizations on top of regulatory changes and their impact worldwide. And this includes early warning alerts, impact probability, productivity workflow tools, and so much more. And with that, I'm delighted to hand it over to you, Dila.
Thank you so much, Orla. And again, welcome everybody. So today we will talk about EU regulation, EU batteries regulation with you. And as you can see, the number of regulations is growing dramatically, specifically for batteries. We see 98 upcoming compliance deadlines on our global radar, and the EU batteries regulation alone contains 25 compliance deadlines. So it's really becoming very difficult to keep up. For the EU batteries and waste batteries regulation, think of this regulation as a roadmap guiding batteries from sourcing and production through use and recycling. It replaces the old batteries directive and applies EU-wide. The goal is zero pollution and circular economy to make batteries fit for the Green Deal. This regulation imposes obligations on economic operators placing batteries on the market or putting them into service. Economic operators are any natural or legal persons involved in making batteries available or putting them into service in the EU. The regulation assigns responsibilities across the battery lifecycle, including manufacturing, importing, distributing, and fulfillment. There are definitions about each of these economic operators in the regulation. So I will just go over them. So according to the regulation, manufacturers means designs, manufactures, or markets batteries under own name, trademark, or puts into service for own use. And when we see the suppliers of battery cells and modules, regulation explains it as provides core components, cells or modules that generate and store energy. For the authorized representative, it says acts on behalf of the manufacturer within the EU for specific regulatory obligations. And the description for importer is places batteries from non-EU countries onto the EU market. For the distributors, it explains as makes batteries available on the EU market, excluding manufacturers, importers. And for the fulfillment service providers, the explanation is offers services like warehousing and dispatching without owning the batteries. There are two important other definitions. One is placing on the market, and the second one is putting into service. And as you can see here, placing on the market means the first supply for distribution use in the EU, and putting into service is like first actual use in the EU. So there's a slight difference between these two. So what kind of batteries need to follow this new regulation? Essentially, all batteries being placed on the EU market, from the small batteries powering portable devices to the large ones in electric cars and industrial equipment. Whether you manufacture the battery itself or import products containing batteries, this regulation impacts your journey. It covers all types of products and also the batteries in products. The only exceptions are batteries specifically for military and space use. It's crucial to correctly identify your battery category as the rules differ slightly. If a battery fits multiple categories, the strictest rules apply. So this is our first pit stop in 2025. Battery makers and importers are expected to show they are not driving towards social or environmental risks blindfolded. First, let's look at a key proposal from the May 21st of this year, which aims to simplify and adjust the requirements. This proposal suggests raising the turnover threshold for companies subject to these rules from 4 million euros to 150 million euros. This change would reduce the administrative burden on a large number of companies, particularly SMEs. In addition, the proposal recommends changing the reporting frequency from an annual basis to once every 3 years. Both of these proposals, one of them is enacted, and the other one is still as a proposal. As you see on the 31st of July this year, we had a major announcement as part of the fourth omnibus simplification package. The EU Commission has decided to postpone the due diligence obligations by 2 years. The new date for these obligations to apply is now August 18th of 2027. This provides a crucial 2-year grace period for companies to prepare and build their due diligence policies and systems. Along with this postponement, the publication of the official due diligence guidelines has also been delayed. They were originally scheduled for February 18th of this year, but have now been pushed to July 26th of 2026. This means we will have to wait a little longer for the detailed guidance on how to implement these requirements. These delays highlight the complexity of these regulations and the Commission's effort to provide a more workable timeline for industry. But now we can work on a more extended and clear schedule. At the 2027 checkpoint, we will switch to the user's perspective. From February 2027, portable batteries must be readily removable and replaceable by the end user at any time during the lifetime of the product. That obligation shall only apply to entire batteries and not to individual cells or other parts included in such batteries. There are 2 very narrow exceptions for this. Products designed to be operated in an environment that is regularly subject to splashing water, water streams, or water immersion, known as the wet environment exemption. And the second exemption covers certain limited categories of medical devices that must be designed for removability. If your products must use an internal battery, derogation had to be applied before the 31st of April. That was the deadline for this year. And another key is the digital battery passport, which means batteries will get an ID card. You will need to put a QR code on your big batteries, and scanning it will show a data sheet of the battery's story, which means electronic record will be accessible via QR code on the battery. Public information such as model and performance will be viewable by everyone. More sensitive details such as detailed composition or exact alloy formulas go only to authorities or repair experts. In practice, manufacturers or importers will input data to a decentralized network or platform and generate unique IDs. In essence, each battery's passport must be maintained from 2027. So these need to be ready. On the 4th of July 2025, the EU Commission issued Commission Delegated Regulation 2025-606 for the purpose of supplementing EU batteries regulation by establishing the methodology for calculation and verification of rates for recycling efficiency and recovery of materials from waste batteries, and the format for the documentation. The methodology provides the calculation and verification of rates for recycling, efficiency, and recovering of materials from waste batteries as set out in the Annex 12 of the batteries regulation. And from August 2026, every EV batteries datasheet must list how much of its cobalt, lithium, nickel, and lead comes from recycled sources. Initially, it's informational. This is per model and plant year by year. But by 2031, those numbers become mandatory benchmarks. EV and industrial batteries must hit the percentages you see here. And that's the phase 1 target. A stricter 2036 target phase adds LMT to it, light means of transportation. And companies should be tracking sources now. If you use a third-party scrap or integrate a reclaim cathode, start logging the weights. And low calls for the methodology to be set by 2026. So once established, use it to verify your product data. So about the CE marking, since 18th of August 2024, all new batteries must carry the CE mark to show them that they meet safety, environmental, and the new battery rules. For portable and LMT types, prepare to stamp info labels by August 2026, model, chemistry, capacity, manufacturer, contact information, etc. Portable batteries also need the recycling symbol by the 18th of August this year. In practice, review your packaging and instruction manuals now. Ensure technical files are up to date, and you will be good to go. So now imagine that we are our journey's GPA's voice is in 2025, and we are checking the dashboard. So get everything in order before hitting the highway, implement your due diligence policies, and collect data for each battery. Decide which products need new removable battery designs. For any derogation cases, it had to be applied before April this year. Ensure CE marking and labels are up to date, and also book a maintenance session for your data systems. You will need them for carbon footprints and battery passports soon. And for the 2026 and 27, start sticking on the new labels and fully prepare products for the 2027 removability rule. By early 2027, every EV, e-bike, industrial battery should have a QR code linking to a passport. Think of it as issuing each battery an EU license plate and a life history log. And for in 2028, your paperwork for each battery should show how much material is reclaimed. This is informational at first, as I mentioned, but it tells regulators you're on track. By 2031, your EV and industrial batteries must actually contain the minimum recycled percentages. Ensure product designs and suppliers enable this. For example, don't just list 8% cobalt recycled. You need at least 16% by then. If your current design can't hit that, rework it now. Also, by 2030, the Commission will report on phasing and phasing out disposable batteries or further eco-design rules. Throughout, you can use European Chemicals Agency's upcoming battery passport database and Commission portals to manage compliance. And thank you so much for joining us today. And now I am giving it over to Andrew.
Thanks very much, Diva. That was a fantastic presentation. Really loved how you used the race car and the stop to the end line of how this is actually going to go. So yeah, nice to meet you, everybody. My name is Andrew O'Neill. Today I'll be presenting on regulatory aspects across the world, specifically down batteries. Move to the next slide there, please, Dila. So batteries power nearly all of our modern devices, from smartphones, laptops to electrical vehicles and renewable energy systems, which makes them indispensable in daily life and in clean energy solutions. But with this ubiquity comes some serious challenges. For instance, we've seen safety incidents since 2019 in New York City alone has experienced over 1,000 fires caused by e-bike batteries, highlighting the real dangers poorly managed batteries can pose. Batteries also bring environmental challenges. The mining of critical materials for battery production can harm ecosystems and communities, and discarded batteries contribute to e-waste and pollution if they're not disposed of properly. On the other hand, there's a significant opportunity here. If we regulate and manage batteries well, we can foster a circular economy where materials are recovered and reused. In fact, the global battery recycle market is projected to reach 41 billion by 2040. So there's not only an environmental benefit but an economic incentive to get this right. This presentation will explore how different countries regulate batteries across their life cycle, from production to and use to end life, to address these safety, environmental, and economic concerns. So now let's go to slide 3, and we'll talk about the US approach. So in the United States, battery regulation is fragmented across various agencies, but is gradually evolving toward a more comprehensive approach. There's no single federal battery law that covers everything. Instead, different aspects of batteries are regulated by different federal agencies. So, for example, the Environmental Protection Agency handles batteries at the end of life, managing waste and recycling. Under umbrellas of the Universal Waste Law and the Research, Conservation and Recovery Act. The Department of Transportation is responsible for the safe shipping of batteries, which includes requiring tests under UN 38.3. For lithium battery transport and enforcement, other shipping regulations through the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. And then, meanwhile, the Consumer Product Safety Commission oversees consumer safety aspects. In reaction to fires and products, you're seeing many measures like Reese's Law and a recent safety proposal aimed at addressing the risks of unstable batteries in consumer products. Beyond the federal level, though, there's a patchwork of state laws. Many states have implemented their own extended user responsibility programs for batteries, requiring manufacturers to take back and manage batteries. This mix of regulations in the US system is still segmented, but we're seeing steps towards greater coordination. So if we move to the next slide, we'll talk about how we can coordinate batteries.
Andrew,
yeah.
Sorry, Andrew, to cut in there, but your audio was just a bit choppy. I don't know, maybe if speaking up might help a bit with it, but it's just chopping a small bit.
Yeah, is it? My apologies. I'll try to speak up.
Brilliant. Thanks a million.
No problem. Yeah, so slide 4. This highlights the recent federal initiatives in the US to improve coordination on battery regulation and support better outcomes. One major step is the National Blueprint for Lithium Batteries. This is a coordinated federal strategy that lays out a plan to strengthen domestic battery supply chains over the next decade. It's essentially multiple agencies working together on everything from research to manufacturing, so the US can secure a reliable, safe supply of batteries. Then when we have the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021, which provides more than $7 billion in funding for various battery-related programs. That funding is going into things like building up battery recycling capacity, supporting research and development for new technologies, and improving processing of battery materials. Next, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 introduced tax incentives that encourage the production and the adoption of cleaner batteries and electric vehicles. For example, tax credits for EV purchases and companies that build batteries for source critical materials domestically. The most recently of April 2025, the CPSC, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, is slated to vote on new safety rule aimed at e-bike and e-scooter batteries, which have been implicated in fires. This proposed rule will likely require compliance with safety standards such as UL 2271, UL 249, 2849, and UL 2272 for those small electric for all those small electric batteries. All these efforts, strategic planning, funding, incentives, and new safety rules show that the federal government is ramping up its involvement in managing battery risks and fostering innovation. Now, if we move now to slide 5, please. Sorry, Dina, would you be able to move on to the next slide?
Right now, it's the state-level battery regulations in the US.
That's fine, yeah, perfect. So slide 5 gives a snapshot of the battery regulation at state and local level in the US, where some of the most progressive rules are being put in place. California, for example, passed AB 2440, an EPR law that mandates battery stewardship for all types of batteries by 2026. This means producers must set up programs to collect and recycle batteries, covering everything from AAA batteries to car batteries. And within the next few years in California, this will all happen in the next few years in California. Vermont was actually ahead of the curve as far back as 2014. Vermont established the first singular-use battery EPR program in the country, creating a model that others have watched closely. More recently, Illinois enacted a Battery Stewardship Act. Under that law, companies have to participate in battery take-back programs. And then notably, Illinois plans to ban the disposal of batteries in landfills by 2028. So kind of pushing more towards recyclability. New York has taken a different angle by focusing on safety. The city now requires e-bikes, e-scooters, and similar micro-mobility devices only to use batteries that meet UL safety standards. So this is a direct response to the fires and incidents that have occurred over the last few years. Additionally, it is worth noting that online marketplaces and retailers are being pulled into these regulations too. Many of these laws compel sellers, including those online, to take some responsibility for the batteries in the products they sell, such as offering recycling drop-offs or take-back options. So in summary, various states are leading their own rules to fill the gaps, often going further than federal law at the moment, with the US covered. Let's move on to slide 6 now. So on slide 6 here, we can see where the battery regulation is shaped by strong provincial programs with support from the national government. Different provinces have put in place their own EPR schemes for batteries. For instance, British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec all have mandatory take-back programs that require companies to collect used batteries, and they set targets and performance standards to ensure programs are effective. These provincial rules mean if you sell batteries or battery-containing products in these provinces, you must participate in the stewardship program to recover them. To tie these efforts together, Canada has now a nationwide stewardship initiative called Call to Recycle. Call to Recycle it runs as a battery collection and recycle program that covers 9 out of 10 provinces, giving Canadians a consistent way to recycle batteries across the country. The federal government is also playing a role. The Environment and Climate Change Canada is working on harmonising these various programs, trying to support consistent standards and possibly coordinate regulations so that the rules aren't drastically different from one province to the other. Additionally, Transport Canada ensures that Canada's rules for transporting batteries, especially lithium-ion batteries, they're aligned with the UN's International Transport Safety Standards. That alignment is crucial for safety in shipping by air and sea, and also helps Canadian businesses by matching global norms. So in summary, Canada's approach is a combination of provincial leadership in battery recycling and then national coordination to keep those efforts unified. So now we can move on to the next slide and tell you about Indonesia. So Indonesia, which has recently introduced a clear mandatory standard for batteries in its market, specifically Indonesia issued Regulation 69 of 2024. This mandates SNI certification for primary batteries. So SNI stands for Indonesian National Standard. So it's basically their equivalent of the national quality mark or the safety mark. This regulation means that as of May 20th, 2025, any primary battery, AAA, AA batteries, anything that aren't rechargeable as well, that is imported or sold into Indonesia must comply with the new SNI standard. So what does this entail? For one, the battery must meet certain labelling requirements. For example, the label needs to clearly show the manufacturer's information, the type of battery, and expiry date, manufacture date, and other details the standard requires. Additionally, the battery has to undergo conformity testing to verify it meets safety and performance benchmarks. This includes tests for capacity, basically how much charge it holds, safety tests, hazards checks, and then chemical checks then for the chemical limitations within the batteries. So only if a battery passes all these requirements can it carry the SNI mark, which must be printed on the product. And importantly, this certification progress has been done through accredited Indonesian bodies. You can't just self-declare. An authorized lab or agency in Indonesia has to test and approve the battery. So in effect, Indonesia is ensuring that any battery on their market is traceable and meets a baseline of safety and quality. It's a significant move and may influence how other countries in that region think about regulating batteries. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So slide 8 shifts towards India, which has a rollout of comprehensive battery waste management rules. These rules are far-reaching, covering all types of batteries used in the country. This means whether a small portable battery in your flashlight, an embedded battery, sealed inside a smartphone or electric vehicle battery, or any battery that is sold within India, it's all under these regulations. One cornerstone of India's rules is the EUBR, and manufacturers must register and then meet specific targets for collecting used batteries and ensure they get recycled. In practice, a battery maker in India now has a legal obligation to take back a certain percentage of batteries they put on the market once those batteries reach end of life. Another aspect of the Indian rules is they differentiate between battery types. They recognize that portable batteries, automotive batteries, EV batteries, and industrial batteries each have different uses and impacts. By differentiating the categories, the rules can be set appropriately by handling and recycling requirements tailored to each type. For example, an EV battery might have different recycling targets or processes than a small portable battery. The regulations also introduce labeling and information disclosure requirements. This means batteries or battery products must come with clear information, likely including details of batteries, capacity, chemistry, safe handling instructions, recycling disposal, and an information about consumers and recyclers. Moreover, the rules don't just stop at producers. Recyclers and refurbishers are also brought into the system. They're required to report on the quantities of batteries they collect and process, ensuring there's accountability and data on how much material is being recovered. Finally, India is aligned with its technical standards, with international best practices. It references Indian standards, IS, for battery performance and safety that are aligned with the Bureau of Indian Standards and Benchmarks. So in other words, India wants to make sure that batteries are not only dealt with responsibly after use, but also meet high quality and safety standards during use. All these measures together signal a very proactive approach by India to manage batteries from cradle to the grave. So we move on to the next slide, please. So if we now look to China, home of the world's largest battery market, and how it blends industrial policy with innovative recycling measures in its battery regulations. Because of its huge scale in manufacturing and use of batteries, China's policies often serve two goals: promoting industry growth and ensuring safety and environmental protection. One foundational element in China's version of the restriction of hazardous substances, China places limits on toxic substances like mercury, cadmium, and any high metal counts in batteries and electronics. So it's similar to the EU's ROS directive. This ensures new batteries on the market are not loaded with certain heavy metals that could be harmful. Also, China has its own set of GB standards. For instance, GB 31241 is a battery safety standard that applies to lithium-ion batteries commonly used in consumer electronics. It sets requirements so batteries don't overheat, leak, or catch fire under normal conditions. The other one would be GB/T 34013 is a standard for EV battery recycling. It provides guidelines for how electrical vehicle batteries should be processed at end of life to recover materials safely and efficiently. Beyond standards, China uses policy measurements to enforce producer responsibility. In 2018, the government introduced interim measures that make electrical vehicle manufacturers responsible for the take-back of EV batteries once the batteries are spent. This means if you're an automaker selling EVs in China, you must set up channels to collect used car batteries and ensure that they are recycled or disposed of properly. It's an early form of EPR, specifically from the booming EV sector. Another cutting-edge initiative in China is the development of a natural battery traceability platform. So you can think of this as like a kind of digital battery passport system, and it would record in a database tracking its origin, chemistry, life cycle events. This kind of traceability helps in multiple ways. It can prevent grey market sales of substandard batteries, helps recyclers know what materials are in a battery when it comes to processing, and ensures safety by tracking any issues back to the source. Overall, China's approach is a mix of strict standards, manufacturing responsibilities, and tech-driven monitoring, fitting for a country that is both battery production powerhouse and keen on regulatory technology. So if we move now to slide 10, please. So now if we look at Japan, we see that their approach to battery regulation, which emphasizes collaboration between the government and industry, and has resulted in very high battery collection and recycling rates. Unlike some countries, Japan doesn't have a single all-encompassing battery law. Instead, batteries are managed under a broader framework of waste management and resource efficiency laws. A key piece of legislation here is the effective utilization of resources act, which is a law that promotes recycling and efficient use of materials for many products. Under this act, the related regulations, Japan has implemented what we can call collaborative extended producer responsibility. Companies often work together through industry to fulfill their take-back and recycling obligations. One standout element in Japan is the JBRC, which stands for Japan Battery Recycling Center. And the JBRC runs a nationwide program for collecting and recycling rechargeable batteries. Consumers in Japan can easily find collection boxes for used batteries, for instance, in electronic stores and any kind of waste disposal place. Thanks to these efforts, the batteries are processed to recover materials. So when it comes to electric vehicles, Japan addresses those under its existing end-of-life vehicle law. The ELV law requires car manufacturers to take back and recycle certain components of vehicles at the end of life. And in recent years, EV batteries have been integrated into that system. This ensures that as electric cars become more common, their large battery packs will be handled properly when the cars are scrapped. Additionally, industry-led projects are a big part of Japan's strategy. A great example is the 4R Energy, a joint venture involving Nissan, which focused on the 4Rs, reuse, refabricate, recycle, and reduce. They take old EV batteries and repurpose them for secondary uses, like energy storage systems, or break them down for recycling, while also working on reducing the need for virgin materials in new batteries. These kinds of initiatives mean that Japan manufacturers are quite involved in ensuring batteries are collected and given a second life or recycled in partnership with government policies. This collaborative model has given Japan one of the better track records in battery recycling. So if you want to move on now to the next slide, please. So South Korea is fairly similar. So they have they include EPR laws that cover electronics, and importantly, this extends to rechargeable batteries with those devices. So if a company is selling electronics in South Korea, they're not only responsible for that device in the life, but they're also ensure the device battery is collected and recycled. So very similar to the Japan structure. So decades of industry and recycling infrastructure like battery recalling programs. So when you replace a battery in your car, they have led to recovery of batteries, preventing lead acid entering the environment. On the innovation side, South Korea government actively supports projects to repurpose and reuse batteries. So similar to Japan again, with like storage solutions with batteries. If you want to move on to the next slide, please. So if we look towards Australia, we can see that they have a recycle national volunteer national scheme, and basically this scheme is voluntary across Australia. And if you, excuse me 2 seconds, there, need some water. So Australia and New Zealand are two countries that have historically leaned towards voluntary programs for battery recycling, but are now shifting towards more regulation. Australia recently in 2022, they launched the lifecycle, which is a national volunteer battery recycling scheme. It is essentially an EPR program for batteries and is voluntary. Through lifecycle, people can drop off used batteries and participate in sites, and they'll know to be recycled. Australia already does well with car battery recycling. Lead acid batteries recycle at high rates because there's an established system. Car mechanics, battery retailers, and all collect them and send it to recycling due to the value of the lead that's inside. However, other batteries, the government is closely watching recycle's progress and is considering making such participation mandatory if needed. And this has become evident in New South Wales, where as recently back in March, they've decided to make it mandatory within New South Wales. And this will probably have an overreaching effect across Australia to all manufacturers there, because if you think of it this way, you wouldn't change your rules won't be the same. You won't be obviously changing your rules for one place and not another. So more than likely, it's going to evolve into basically the whole of Australia, kind of making this more mandatory rather than voluntary. And then New Zealand, their government uses the Waste Minimisation Act, and it declares batteries as a priority product. This designation is significant as it means the government has identified batteries as a product that urgently needs better waste management, and it paves the way for mandatory product stewardship schemes. New Zealand is currently developing regulations that require battery producers and sellers to be part of take-back and recycling programs. So far, so much of New Zealand battery recycling has been through voluntary industry-led efforts, just like Australia in that sense. But by labelling batteries as a priority product, they're signaling that formal regulations and programs are on the horizon. So both Australia and New Zealand are basically in the transition phase to kind of introduce a more structured response to bringing batteries into a more, I suppose, mandatory standard of EPR schemes. Do you want to move on to the next slide, please? So yeah, Brazil is one of these leaders in South America. Basically, they have a common resolution 401/2008, which bans mercury and cadmium, and they have their own kind of like EPR scheme, which kind of sets them as the leader because they were the first to actually set up an EPR type scheme within Brazil, and has kind of the same, obviously, kind of same effects as the rest of the world, where people can bring back their used batteries and get them all stored. And then other countries within, like Latin America, are kind of slowly following suit towards Brazil, and beginning to look at setting up EPR-led schemes. But at the moment, right now, there's nothing mandatory in terms of EPR across Brazil. Want to move to the next slide, please? So if we look at the global trends, so we're looking like we've reached, like, this kind of ties together around the world. Battery regulations becoming more stricter, smarter, and we can see efforts to make it more coordinated across different countries. But we're not there yet. There's a clear trajectory. There's going to be international coordination, collaboration, and alignment of standards. They're improving. Everybody kind of recognize that there is the same issues of the safety and the environmental impacts, and trying to get this kind of circular economy system within batteries. So if we look at what Neil said in terms of EU and how that's working, that's kind of the forefront of, I suppose, regulatory technology at the moment. You'll see this kind of being shipped across the world, this DPP, eventually in the long run. So yeah, on the next slide, please. So the main challenges, I think, now for manufacturers is trying to, I suppose, align yourself with these kind of, with the EU, and then that's the way I'd look at it. I'd align the company with the EU kind of system, and that'll help you really get your ducks in a row for most countries across the world. Obviously, there's nuances, small and large, but in terms of getting, I suppose, an idea of how batteries are regulated across the world, the EU probably has the most comprehensive system. So if you're looking at trying to, build up your knowledge in this area, definitely I'd start with the EU. Thanks very much. No, I think that's it now, Dina. I went through that as well. Thanks very much. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
Brilliant. Thanks a million for all of your attention so far, and thank you, Dila and Andrew, for that fantastic overview of the batteries regulatory landscape. And just so you're all aware as well, these slides are available to the left side of your screen and will be sent to you alongside the recording within 24 hours. As Andrew just mentioned, we have the floor open now for the Q&A session. So we've had a lot of questions coming in already, but if you do have a question that you would like us to answer, do let us know using that Ask a Question widget to the left side of your screen. And any questions that we don't get to during this live session will be addressed after the webinar, and we'll follow up with you directly. So definitely do make sure to submit that question if you have one. As mentioned, we've had plenty coming in, so we'll answer some of them now. I don't know if my audio is breaking up, but I'll just repeat it. Are there any specific timelines for the implementation of the New South Wales return scheme coming into force?
Oh, yes, that's no problem. So at the moment, it has been ascended in New South Wales, but there hasn't been given a current date within the legislation to provide basically entry into force date. But once that's available, I'll be writing a blog on it, and it'll be introduced as quickly as possible on the C2P site.
Perfect. Thank you. And yeah, just let me know if you can't hear me. We're having a bit of chaotic weather here at the minute, so I think it's impacting my connection. So yes, the second question that we have.
It's crazy in Dublin at the moment.
I'll keep going while I have you. The EU Battery Regulation Article 7.1 says that the EU Commission shall, by the 18th of February 2024, for electric vehicle batteries, adopt a delegated act establishing the methodology for the calculation and also the format for the carbon footprint declaration. Are these published now? And if not, when will they be published?
Yeah, these are published, but they both of them are drafts right now. They are not finalized. And there are two different planned adoption periods for both of them. For the carbon footprint methodology for electric vehicle batteries, probably it needs to be enacted by the end of this month. And for the format of the carbon footprint declaration for batteries has to be enacted until the end of this year. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Dila. And has any other country implemented the Digital Product Path or the DPP?
The only one that can come to mind is China at the moment. They've kind of done like a rollout of an experimental plan across their state in terms of they've done it with a few manufacturers in China where they kind of make them put extra markings on the product for traceability, and they're kind of doing it as kind of a research to see how it works and see what type of way it would work within China. So no, not at the moment. Most of the world is kind of still not before, but they're not in the same kind of area as the EU at the moment.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks a million, Andrew and Dila. As I mentioned, we've received a huge amount of questions coming in today to this webinar, and I know that there were audio issues during it, so the slides and the Q&A list will be available to everyone, and we will be producing a guide using the transcript and the slides from this webinar that we'll share with everyone, so everything's outlined clearly to you all, and you get all of the information. So yeah, we'll share a guide on the webinar using the transcript and the slides and the full Q&A list, which will be quite hefty. We've gotten a lot of questions in today. And we hope you found it helpful. We look forward to seeing you in our upcoming webinars, and you can check out our resources section on the website to stay updated and to access our latest white paper blogs and of course webinars, both and upcoming. And with that in mind, we do have plenty of upcoming content, so make sure you keep an eye out. Our next webinar, Navigating Global Packaging Regulations, Expert Insights and Analysis, is scheduled for September 24th. So we do hope to see you there. Thank you all very much again for joining us today, and we'll make sure to share that comprehensive guide with you on this webinar with you in the coming weeks. Thank you.